Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on shortwave broadcast through the shortwave facilities of the United States Agency for Global Media or Voice of America on the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. I'm your host, Leo Magpayo, and this is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has ordered government agencies to move swiftly following the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck off the coast of Sarangani on Monday morning. In a statement released shortly after the quake, the president said he has directed all relevant agencies to act immediately and respond to the developing situation. According to President Marcos, the Office of Civil Defense and the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, are now coordinating with local governments, monitoring conditions across affected provinces, and mobilizing disaster response teams. The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, has been instructed to pre-position relief goods and ensure that evacuation centers are fully prepared and operational. Meanwhile, the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, is on standby to assess damage to roads, bridges, and other critical infrastructure, and to clear access routes needed for rescue and relief operations. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, has also issued a tsunami warning for several coastal areas in Mindanao. President Marcos has likewise ordered the suspension of classes at all levels in affected areas until further notice, noting that the Department of Education, or DepEd, will coordinate with local government units. He urged residents in coastal and high-risk areas to follow government advisories without delay. The chief executive assured the public that the national government is fully mobilized, adding that he remains in constant communication with regional offices and local chief executives on the ground. President Marcos said the government will continue to issue regular updates as the situation unfolds.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang is assuring the public that the national government has sufficient funds to support emergency response and relief operations following the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck off Sarangani and triggered tsunami warnings across parts of Mindanao. In a palace briefing, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has already ordered all concerned agencies to immediately respond and extend assistance to affected communities. Castro emphasized that government resources remain intact and ready for deployment. The Department of Budget and Management also confirmed that the quick response funds of key agencies remain available and may be tapped at once for disaster response.
Nag-utos na po ang Pangulo at kailangan tumugon po lahat ang ahensyang involved dito at concerned agencies. At alam po natin na ang pondo po sa ngayon ay sapat pa para sa pagsasagawa po ng pagligtas at pag-rescue at para po maibsan ang impact ng nangyaring sakuna nitong araw na to.
Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, the death toll from the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck off Sarangani on June 8th has climbed to 35, many hours after the powerful tremor shook large parts of Mindanao. According to Office of Civil Defense data, as of 8 Monday evening, 31 fatalities were recorded in Soc-Sargen and 4 in Davao Region. In Soc-Sargen, 17 deaths were reported. In Sarangani Province, 12 in General Santos City and 2 in South Cotabato. Sarangani Disaster Chief Rene Punzalan said 14 people died in the municipality of Glan after a landslide buried homes at the foot of a mountain. He added that other areas in the province have yet to report casualties, but communication remains a major challenge due to power outages. Punzalan also expressed concern over continuing aftershocks, noting the fear and anxiety among residents. In the meantime, infrastructure damage in Mindanao has climbed to over 1 billion pesos. According to Public Works and Highways Secretary Vince Dizon, the figure is expected to rise as assessment teams continue their inspections across affected provinces. Dizon, along with other cabinet officials, flew immediately to General Santos City on the orders of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. to conduct an on-ground evaluation of the quake's impact. In his initial rounds, Dizon reported that several bridges are currently impassable and will require urgent repairs. He added that similar assessments are underway for schools, hospitals, and other public facilities that may have sustained structural damage. Dizon emphasized that the government is prioritizing the rapid restoration of critical infrastructure to ensure that rescue, relief, and recovery operations can proceed without delay.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, reports that nearly 20,000 families, or 86,245 individuals, have now been affected by the powerful earthquake that struck Mindanao. According to the agency, the hardest-hit areas include the Zamboanga Peninsula, Davao Region, and Soc-Sargen. Of the total affected population, an estimated 5,000 families are currently staying in evacuation centers, while 270 families are temporarily sheltering with relatives. The DSWD says it is working around the clock to ensure that affected communities have adequate food supplies and essential assistance. DSWD Secretary Rex Gatchalian personally traveled to General Santos City to oversee disaster response operations in the quake-hit provinces. During his visit, he met with local officials, distributed aid, and inspected the operations of the DSWD Mobile Kitchen and Mobile Command Center. The agency also assured the public that more than 5.2 billion pesos worth of relief resources are ready for augmentation to local government units. Relief supplies have already been pre-positioned in affected regions, including 182,600 family food packs and 19,941 non-food items in the Davao region, as well as 143,614 food packs and 9,980 non-food items in Soc-Sargen.
Dateline Malacañang.
The number of aftershocks rocking Mindanao continues to rise following the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck off Sarangani on Monday. According to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, a total of 989 aftershocks have been recorded so far. Of these, 289 have confirmed locations, while 20 were strong enough to be felt by residents. The aftershocks range from magnitude 1.3 to 6.7, with PHIVOLCS warning that the sequence could continue for several months, which is typical after a quake of this strength. The agency added that powerful earthquakes are not unusual along the Cotabato Trench, an active tectonic feature in the southern Philippines known for generating strong seismic activity. Authorities continue to urge residents to remain alert, especially in areas already affected by landslides, structural damage, and ongoing ground movement.
Dateline Malacañang.
The international community is standing firmly behind the Philippines, sending messages of sympathy and offers of assistance after the devastating magnitude 7.8 earthquake that struck southern Mindanao on Monday. Major allies and global partners, including Japan, France, China, Canada, Australia, Germany, the Czech Republic, and the European Union, expressed solidarity as rescue and recovery efforts continue. From Tokyo, Japanese Minister Sanae Takaichi conveyed her deepest condolences, saying she was deeply saddened by reports of collapsed structures and casualties. She affirmed that Japan is ready to provide all possible assistance based on the Philippines' needs, adding that Japan always stands with the people of the Philippines. The French embassy in Manila also expressed sorrow over the loss of lives and destruction, extending condolences to the families of the victims and pledging full solidarity with the Filipino people and authorities responding to the disaster. The Chinese embassy issued a similar message, saying it was deeply saddened by the tragedy and offering heartfelt condolences to bereaved families and affected communities. From Canada, both the embassy in Manila and Ambassador David Hartman expressed sympathy for residents of Sarangani, South Cotabato, Sultan Kudarat, and nearby provinces. Hartman said Canada stands in solidarity and is ready to assist. German Ambassador Andreas Farnoschke also extended sympathies, assuring that Germany stands with the Philippines as recovery efforts move forward. The European Union's ambassador, Massimo Sandoro, offered support to affected communities and responders, saying the EU stands in solidarity with Mindanao and the entire country. The Czech embassy likewise sent comforting words to the injured, displaced, and grieving, expressing unity with the Philippines as recovery begins. Australian Ambassador Mark Innes Brown joined the global chorus of support, offering condolences to families who lost loved ones and wishing affected communities a speedy recovery. As relief operations continue, the Philippines is receiving a strong wave of international support, underscoring long-standing partnerships and shared commitment to humanitarian assistance.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, Malacañang says the Philippines firmly opposed forced labor and is prepared to defend itself following a recent United States Trade Representative or USTR report claiming the country lacks safeguards against forced labor-linked imports. The palace on Monday assured that the government is taking the issue seriously, emphasizing the Philippines' long-standing position against forced labor and its commitment to enforcing laws that protect workers' rights. In a palace briefing, Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the administration is now reviewing the USTR findings and will coordinate with U.S. officials through proper diplomatic channels to demonstrate the country's compliance. She added that the Philippines can defend its record, noting that the Office of the President acknowledges the USTR's proposal to impose an additional 12.5% tariff on select Philippine products. The proposed tariff hike stems from a USTR recommendation targeting countries deemed to have insufficient safeguards against imports produced wholly or partly through forced labor. Castro argued that the Philippines has been actively implementing laws and enforcement actions against forced labors and human trafficking, citing recent operations as proof. Asked whether President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. will send another delegation to the U.S. for discussions, Castro said this is among the options being considered. The USTR reviewed 60 economies and concluded that the Philippines is among those lacking adequate mechanisms to block forced labor-linked imports.
Alam natin, simula't simula pa lamang, ang mga batas natin at ang pagpapatupad ng mga proseso laban sa forced labor. Alam po natin yan at alam din natin, kamakailan lamang ay mayroong nahuli na isang bar na kung saan kinukundina natin ang forced labor at ang human trafficking. So, ito po ang mensahe natin patungkol po dyan. Kinikilala ng tanggapan ng Pangulo ang proposal ng United States Trade Representatives, USTR, na magpataw ng dagdag na 12.5% na taripa sa ilang produkto ng Pilipinas, alinsunod ito sa Section 301 hinggil sa investigation concerning forced labor enforcement. Seryosong tinutugunan ng pamahalaan ang usaping ito. Binibigyan diin ng pamahalaan ang matagal ng paninindigan laban sa forced labor at ang umiiral na batas laban dito. Kasalukuyang sinusuri ang ulat ng USTR at makikipag-ugnayan sa mga opisyal ng US sa tamang paraan. So, kaya po nating ipaglaban na tayo po ay hindi lumalabag sa batas at tayo po ay kumukondina sa forced labor.
That was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Also on Monday, Malacañang rejected former Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano's proposal for an interim leadership setup in the Senate, reiterating that the executive branch recognizes acting Senate President Sherwin Gatchalian as the chamber's legitimate leader. In a palace briefing, Presidential Communications Undersecretary and Press Officer Claire Castro said the suggested arrangement requiring dual signatories and joint certifications for Senate transactions would only create confusion and further complicate operations. Reports earlier indicated that Cayetano's camp was pushing for temporary administrative mechanisms with the new Senate majority, including a dual signatory system for vouchers, checks, disbursements, contracts, personnel actions, and other official documents. Gatchalian was elected acting Senate President last week amid days of turmoil following the arrest of Senator Jinggoy Estrada and the absence of members of the former majority bloc, which led to multiple canceled sessions. Cayetano has denounced the leadership change as an illegal coup d'etat and has refused to recognize the authority of the new majority. Castro cautioned that Cayetano's proposal could mirror past political arrangements that later became contentious. Malacañang has repeatedly maintained that Gatchalian's election was consistent with jurisprudence, including the Avellino versus Cuenco doctrine, and aligned with precedents previously applied by the Senate. Castro said the executive branch will continue to deal exclusively with Gatchalian on matters involving Senate leadership and official communications.
Muli, ang kinikilala ng ehekutibo ay si Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Walang maidudulot sa ngayon ng ganitong klaseng arrangement. Baka mangyari na naman ang nangyari dati sa House of Representatives kung saan meron na silang term sharing agreement na hindi tinupad agad ni Senator Alan Cayetano. Again, uulitin natin, tanging si Senator Sherwin Gatchalian ang kinikilala nating liderato ngayon sa Senado.
That was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has approved the expansion of the West Cebu Industrial Park Special Economic Zone in Balamban, Cebu, adding more than 64 hectares to one of the country's major industrial and shipbuilding hubs. Under Proclamation No. 1288, signed on June 3rd, 2 parcels of land in Barangay Buanoy, covering a combined 647,229 square meters, were officially added to the existing Cebu Special Economic Zone. The move was endorsed by the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, or PEZA, and is subject to the Special Economic Zone Act of 1995. The newly designated areas, identified as SK-07-000-197 and SK-07-000-198, will now form part of the West Cebu Industrial Park, a key manufacturing and shipbuilding center jointly developed by the Aboitiz Group and Japan's Choneshi Holdings. The 540-hectare ecozone hosts several global companies and provides jobs to more than 14,000 skilled Filipino workers engaged in medium and heavy industry operations. The latest expansion follows a series of similar proclamations by the President to strengthen and enlarge the country's network of special economic zones. PEZA-registered enterprises in these zones enjoy a range of incentives, including income tax holidays, special corporate income tax or enhanced deductions, tax and duty-free importation of equipment and raw materials, and value-added tax or VAT exemptions on qualified transactions.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Marcos Jr. administration is ramping up efforts to resolve the persistent power challenges in Oriental Mindoro province, rolling out major infrastructure projects aimed at strengthening the island's energy system and ensuring a more reliable supply for residents. In a palace briefing Monday, Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary and Press Officer Claire Castro said that on May 25th, a key agreement was signed by the Maharlika Investment Corporation, National Power Corporation, National Transmission Corporation, and the National Electrification Administration to rehabilitate, modernize, and expand Mindoro's power transmission infrastructure. Beyond this initiative, the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP, has also proposed a 23.9 billion peso submarine cable system that will allow power to be transmitted from Batangas to Oriental Mindoro. The project is targeted for completion by January of 2028. The submarine cable is part of Stage 1 of the much larger 90.6 billion pesos 500 kilovolt Batangas-Mindoro Interconnection and Backbone Project, which aims for full completion by 2030. Castro said these efforts reflect the administration's commitment to delivering long-term, stable, and modernized energy solutions for Mindoro and its growing communities.
Nagkaroon na po ng signing of agreement May 25, 2026. Ang mga parties dito ay ang Maharlika Investment Corporation, National Power Corporation, National Transmission Corporation at National Electrification Administration. Ito po ay para ma-rehabilitate, ma-modernize and develop Mindoro's power transmission infrastructure. At ang layunin din po nito ay to improve reliability and resiliency of the Mindoro small grid, support the island's long-term energy requirements, and lay groundwork for eventual interconnection with the national grid. So maliban po dyan ay nandito pa rin po merong project proposal ang National Grid Corporation of the Philippines na may halagang 23.9 billion pesos submarine cable to connect Batangas and Oriental Mindoro. So inaasahan po ang target completion ay January 2028. At ang full Batangas-Mindoro 500 kV interconnection and backbone project worth 90.6 billion to be completed naman bago by the end, no? Sa katapusan ng 2030. So sana po lahat ng mga proyekto at programa ng Pangulo ay maituloy o maipagpatuloy ng susunod na liderato.
Was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang on Monday praised the Bureau of Customs, or BOC, for exceeding its revenue target, collecting more than 400 billion pesos in the first 5 months of 2026. Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the agency, under Commissioner Ariel Nepomuceno, not only met but surpassed its collection goal for the year. According to Castro, the BOC generated 406.3 billion pesos from January to May, with a 9.3 billion peso surplus that will help fund the administration's priority programs and projects. She emphasized that the Bureau's strong performance reflects President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s directive to ensure that every peso of public funds benefits ordinary Filipinos. Castro added that Commissioner Nepomuceno attributed the multi-billion peso surplus to efficient operations and stronger coordination among customs personnel. The palace said the administration expects the BOC to maintain its momentum as part of broader efforts to strengthen fiscal management and support national development initiatives.
Bureau of Customs nagtala ng mahigit 406 billion pesos na koleksyon sa unang 5 buwan ng 2026. Sa pamumuno ni Commissioner Ariel Nepomuceno, hindi lang basta nakamit, kundi nalagpasan ng BOC ang target collection nito ngayong taon. Mula Enero hanggang Mayo, umabot sa 406.3 billion pesos ang naging koleksyon ng ahensya. Umabot naman sa 9.3 billion pesos ang surplus collection na tiyak na makakatulong sa priority projects and programs ng pamahalaan. Ang epektibong trabaho at istriktong pagtutok ng BOC sa collection process nito ay alinsunod sa direktiba ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. na siguruhing bawat piso mula sa kaban ng bayan ay mapapakinabangan ng ordinaryong mamamayan. Iginiit ni Commissioner Nepomuceno na resulta ng maayos na trabaho at mas pinaigting na kooperasyon ng mga kawani ng BOC ang mahigit 9 billion pesos na surplus ng ahensya.
That was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. will push through with his traditional Independence Day activities on June 12, despite circulating reports of an alleged destabilization plot, Malacañang said Monday. In a palace briefing, Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary and Press Officer Claire Castro confirmed that preparations for the 128th Independence Day commemoration remain unchanged. The palace has yet to release the official schedule, but the president traditionally leads the flag-raising and wreath-laying ceremony at the Rizal Monument in Manila, followed by the Vin d'Honneur reception in Malacañang with members of the diplomatic corps, government officials, and other guests. Castro said the palace has not received validated intelligence confirming any destabilization attempt despite online and offline chatter alleging that a religious bloc may stage disruptive actions on June 12. She issued a warning to individuals attempting to sow unrest. Malacañang reiterated that the president remains focused on leading the Independence Day rites and ensuring national stability amid the rumors.
Sa ngayon po, definitely kung ano po yung sinasagawa ng Pangulo sa mga nakaraang Independence Day, ganun pa rin po ang magiging activity ng Pangulo. At sa patungkol po sa nasasabing rally, panggugulo, sinabi na po natin, mag-ingat po tayo sa mga ganitong aktibidad. Although wala pa po tayong natatanggap na anumang impormasyon, pero wag nating hayaan maghasik ang kadiliman dito sa ating pamahalaan. Kailangan po tayo magtrabaho at ilabanan din po natin ang mga kampon ng kadiliman.
That was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. leads the 128th anniversary of the Philippine Navy this Tuesday morning at Naval Station Jose Andrada along Rojas Boulevard in Manila. The President is expected to be welcomed by the Navy leadership and accorded arrival honors. In his keynote address, President Marcos is anticipated to highlight the administration's push for a future-ready and modernized Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP, a message that comes amid continuing tensions in the region, particularly in the West Philippine Sea. During last year's Navy anniversary in Subic, Zambales, the President underscored that the Philippines will not tolerate any act that disrespects the nation's sovereignty. This year's celebration carries the theme, Philippine Navy at 128, modern and ready, strong and steady, credible in mission, always mission ready.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service can be heard over the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. Radyo Pilipinas World Service is also live on audio streaming. Just download Evox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our posts as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.